the artist. This is of course the film that came out last year that won the Best Picture Oscar. I'm actually quite ashamed to say that I had honestly never heard of this film up until it started winning all these accolades that it did back in February or whatever. Like, of course, it swept the Oscars, it swept the BAFTAs, and it swept the Golden Globes. So of course I was interested in seeing it. The plot of the film, I mean, of course, what everyone knows about it is that it's a silent movie. Like, it's filmed in the style of one of these, silent films made in the 20s or whatever. And the plot centres around this silent movie star from this time period who's very successful, but then when the transition is made from like silent films to talkie films, like films where people talk as they do in films today, he just can't make that transition. I don't know if it's the fact that he can't make the transition, but I think it's more so that he won't. He doesn't see the point in actors talking, so he can't bring himself to make the transition, and as such he sort of just goes in a downward spiral. Meanwhile, he befriends this young female actress, what other kind of actress is there, but anyway, he sort of gives her tips on how to make it big and how to be very successful, and she makes good on them, and she becomes a very successful star of like talkie films, whilst he of course becomes very much less successful, and of course it gets to the point where she's more or less in the top of the film world and he's in the bottom, really. In that respect, it almost resembles the plot of Singing in the Rain, which was about obviously the transition from silent films to talkie films, but of course, that film was all singing, all dancing, very much, a feel-good type of picture. This film, I think it is a feel-good type picture. Like, you definitely have that feeling leaving it, and you definitely have that feeling throughout large sections of it, but it does have its dark moments, I think. The story, you could argue, is quite simplistic. Like, there's no real story developments that really take you by huge surprise, by huge shock. But saying that, I don't think it's cliched. Like, I mean, you've seen rags to riches stories before, like where someone's in the top of the world, then they go down to the bottom, then they get brung back up by the end of it. This film does it a bit differently. Like, there's certain aspects of a plot like that this film actually avoids, like the female character. Like, in most films you'll notice the character that's successful that displaces the other successful character. They tend not to care about the character they've displaced. It's just generally below them, or maybe they'll start to care towards the end. But no, I think there's like a moment where there's a brief part of the film where she's kind of in the top of the world and she doesn't really care, but then as soon as she becomes aware of his plight, she's very sympathetic to him, and she's presumably willing to give it up in order to save him, really. And I think that was quite clever, because that was something that you've seen in other films before, and if they'd done that, I would have probably been forced to say that it was a bit cliched. I mean, it was a good film in that it was just people living a life. There was no cliches, none of it felt forced. It just felt like, real things that real people would have done in this type of situation, and they just use the silent film technique to their advantage in telling it. So the story, I thought, was fine. I didn't have any problems with it. I didn't think it was cliched, and as I said, I did enjoy that it was just people living a life. They didn't have to try anything strange with it, and it just felt real, I would say. The acting, I was at first kind of not too sure, because it's hard really to judge the acting because it's silent, and it's almost like trying to judge a mime, if you will. But taking into consideration that these characters, all of their emotions and their convictions are conveyed through like body language and emotion, I think in that respect the acting is superb. It really is, because I mean if you look back to the old silent movies of the 20s, the people in them would often act very exaggerated. Their body language would be just amplified to the extreme in order to really hammer home and convey what they were feeling. Now the actors in this film, it's kind of obvious. Well, like the main two actors, it's obviously they were chosen because their appearance really does just it conveys their personality almost instantly. But of course they do have, when they do use like body language and what have you to convey their emotions in the story, I think they do it really well. It really serves the film. It serves the film really well. And in that respect, obviously, I have to praise the acting, so it's really good. The main two actors, I didn't recognise them. They're fairly unknowns, although I hear that they're both quite famous in France. There was a few other American actors. James Cromwell was in it. He was like, I don't know if it was like the servant or the butler of the main character. At the beginning of the film, like you see the credits, and the credits are in the style of the typical 20s silent film, and I liked that. That was nice to see. I saw that Malcolm McDowell was in it. I was quite pleasantly surprised with that. I was looking forward to seeing what his role in the film was. He's in it for about 5 seconds in one scene towards the beginning, and that's it. So they may as well have just called it a cameo appearance, because he really, I mean, unless he's in the film later and I've just missed him, which is unlikely. He really had no role in the film. The direction, the way the film was shot, I thought was wonderful. It really was. It reminded me of Citizen Kane, actually, just in the way that the camera was utilised to such a stylistic extent, like the tricks of camera, the match cuts. It was a stroke of genius, really. It was very cleverly shot. Stylistically, just wonderful, really. The look and the feel of the film, I would say, is one of its strongest attributes. Like, it's an experience. The plot is almost secondary, I think, just to the overall experience and feel of the film that's conveyed through like the cinematography and the, just the way it's shot and the way it's lighted. I mean, there are a couple of scenes where just through a trick of the camera or through the way that the scene's conducted, it's wonderful to see. Just, it's so beautifully shot. Like, there's one scene where, like, they make good use of mirrors in the film, I think. I mean, and that's another thing that Citizen Kane did as well. And there's one scene where it's just like the guy's beginning his descent down into the gutter, basically, and the camera kind of rotate. He's sitting over a table in which he can see his reflection, and the camera rotates, and he pours his drink onto the mirror, and his reflection kind of reappears again. Just, I mean, okay, me saying this is going to sound mundane, but it's just an example of the very clever staging of scenes and direction in this film. One thing I would say about it is that it's universal. This film, like obviously, it is a French film. I honestly, I didn't actually know that until I'd finished watching it. Because you could really just make the title cards any language, and just because the whole film's told through expression. Okay, so overall, I do recommend it really to anybody. I mean, if you're a fan of like silent films, you'll be in heaven, no doubt. But just to anyone really, I think this is a really good example of how you can tell a story without using conventional means of storytelling. So in that respect, I thought it was very much commendable. Who would I not recommend it to? I think if you're one of these types of people that doesn't really appreciate the stylistic aspects of a film, who can't just watch a film and enjoy the overall experience. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I get that some people just like to watch a good story and be enticed by it, but if you're if you can be receptive to the stylistic aspects of film, you will especially like this. And if you're not too in touch with that, if you're just kind of bored, if there's not any real plot development going on, you'll probably find it a challenge to get through it. But other than that, of course, it's wonderful. As a rating, I'd say 8 out of 10. It's one of the most pleasant film watching experiences I've had in quite a long while. Do I think it deserved the Best Picture Oscar? Possibly. I mean, I honestly haven't seen many of the other contenders for the Best Picture Oscar, so I can't really pass that great a judgment on it. But from what I've seen, it was definitely deserving of some accolade, because it really was excellent.